Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Anniston, and this is Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Ricksteins. I'm joined by my co-host, Anniston Blair Ricksteins. And if this is your first time joining us on the show, I just want to start off right now by saying thank you. Welcome for joining us. If you have listened to every single episode, we want to thank you again for investing in you and for spending a little bit of time here with us. On the Empowered Life Podcast, Anniston and I are dedicated in bringing you topics that we believe are going to serve you. And the only way that we know something has the power or the potential to create a change in your life is because what we talk about created a shift or a change in our life.
It's interesting. Most of the topics that we bring to this podcast come because it's what's real for us right now. Like Rudi and I were just sitting in our sauna. It's a Saturday, and we were sitting there sweating it out for 20 minutes, having the most profound conversation about this topic that we're going to be talking to you about today.
You know, I have had just an incredible week where in calls, my phone calls with my clients were preparing me for what we most wanted to talk about today. And we always find that when you are seeing clues along the way, it's kind of leading you down a path or down a direction. And so today's podcast episode is going to be on the topic of how do you become who it is that you most aspire to be. You know, we talk about this all the time. Everybody wants to have, be, do, and achieve something. How do you do it? Because when you want something, you don't have it because you want it. And there's a difference between wanting and having. So how do you go from wanting to having?
I think that what's interesting is we often talk about, actually, and what's coming to me right now is a story from this past week. I was on a call with someone who reports into me on my org chart, if you will, or the org chart that I manage. And we were having a discussion about her growth path. And she said, you know, what I really want to be is a director. I really want to be promoted into director. What do I need to do for that to happen? Which I love these conversations and I love the questions, because if they're asking the question, it normally means that they're ready for the answer. And I said to her, well, when I'm looking to promote someone, I don't look for the person who wants the promotion. I look for the person who is already doing the position, like who in their natural state is already leaning into and doing the tasks that position requires. And so to answer your question, the easiest, fastest route, in my opinion, for her to get there is to start being the director now. It's that whole idea of lead without a title, but really starting to lean in to be a director now and not to wait for the title, and instead trust that she will be seen and what she's doing will be seen. And by her developing all of these skills, she'll then actually be prepared for the position. And if she's waiting to be given the position, then there's a chance that she won't be ready for it. It will come too soon and she could fail.
So we can hear what you're saying, and that makes all the sense in the world, right? You have to act as the person that you're aspiring to be. But what I want to do right now is support our audience in understanding what does that physically mean? And then how does that create the shift or the change that you're wanting? You know, I am obsessed with energy. Anniston, obsessed with energy. We believe that our bodies are not these physical things that we lug around from point A to point B, but instead we're these atoms that are vibrating based on the frequency with which we think. And we have our thoughts produce our feelings update the physical body. And as the physical body is updated, it's sending electromagnetic impulses out and into the world. If you have a desire to want something, the energy's in I am wanting. I can tell you from that, you're going to laugh at me now, but 5-6 years old, I used to dream about being in love, and I would pray at night, get out of my bed, put my hands together and say, God, please, can I meet my wife tomorrow? I don't know what kind of 5-year-old does that. I most certainly did.
Always, I think we're dreaming of, I just want the latest truck. Like, I want to play this sport. Nope. Rudi Ricksteins, dreaming of love. Love it.
I knew you were coming. And so I was preparing. And I share that because for the longest time, I was in a state of saying, and I wish I could be in love. I want love. And then when I got into my 20s and then eventually touching my early 30s, I was still in the state of I want. Well, when you want something, you are now putting a stake in the sand that says you have a desire. But you're putting another stake in the sand that says, well, you're nowhere near that desire. And so there's a space between what you want and what you aspire to be. And when you are holding yourself with the thought produces the emotion of, I have a desire for something that I don't have. The brain's going to look around you and it's going to validate, yeah, you are where you are and you're not where you aspire to be. And so when people talk about law of attraction, they talk about creation, they talk about setting goals and intentions, we have to be mindful of what are the thoughts and the feelings that we have on that topic so that we can align with it. Because if you're aligning with it, it's no longer about action. It's about energetically vibrating and aligning an experience that you want, an experience that you desire to becoming closer and closer. And so when you have a desire, as you listen to this podcast episode, because I have to throw it to the audience, if you're listening to us, this means that there's a message here for you. And the message is maybe that you have a goal and you haven't been able to achieve the goal because you have been holding on the feeling of what's the gap between what you want versus where it is that you want to go. Anniston's example was so beautiful. And I'm going to share a similar one a little later in the show today, because people so desperately want to have something and then they feel like, well, I'm not there. I'm not being seen. I'm not being appreciated. I'm not being valued. I'm not in love. I don't have the partner. I don't have the money. And we have a lot of feelings on any one of those topics. And those feelings are now bidding on your behalf.
I think, I'd love to share just a real-time example on my side as well. But first, I want to say that one way I like to look at this process is through reverse engineering. Okay, so if you start from the end, let's say, for example, and I'm going to give as an example, I have always had a dream of being a published author. And finally, my dreams are coming to fruition. My book is in the process of being published. It's going to be launched in January of 2025 officially, which I'm so excited about. But because I understand manifestation and I understand the power of up-leveling your identity to include this new thing that you're going to be in order to be successful at that, my work is not done, which means I have to start being a published author now. If I wait till my book comes out to say, wait a minute, now I'm a published author. What does a published author do? I'm still going to be the same person I am now, feeling like I'm an imposter as a published author. So what I ask myself is, what will it feel like to be a published author? What will it feel like? What kinds of actions will I take? What will my day look like? What responsibilities will I have? How will I be promoting the book? Who will I be speaking to? And how can I start having those conversations now so that when the book comes out, I am perfectly prepared and vibrating, if you will, at that same level of I am a published author?
I'd like you to help our audience ground that, because we can hear you and we can understand what you're saying, but how do you do it? How do you physically do it? And I want to give some context because, this book has been 2 years in the making at least. And Anniston wrote at least, but I mean this specific book. There's many other books that are sitting on a desktop, fully written, by the way, that just have yet to be published, but we'll talk about that in another episode. And so this particular book is at least 2 years in the making. And then she wrote the book and then she started seeking out publishers and then started to align with the publishing house and then felt like this wasn't aligned. And she was looking for a different option that would feel more aligned. But I think that had a little bit to do with it, but it more had to do with the fact that she wasn't yet emanating, vibrating, being a published author. Now, let me clarify. She doesn't want to be an author. She wants to be a New York Times bestselling author, a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. She wants to be in every single airport all over the world, that when we fly, we can turn, see it, and just have that giggle, oh my God, there's the book. Or to see somebody grabbing a copy as we run to our next gate. That is what we're living and that's what we're creating. How do you, if you could, give us examples of what did you physically do that sped up the process for you to align with the publisher that you're going to be working with?
Well, I think that I realized for a while that my goal was just to find a publisher for a while. And that was where the error was, because I was saying, I just want to find a publisher. I wasn't leaning into, I am a published author. And how would a published author approach a publisher? very differently than someone who's never published a book before, right? In terms of levels of confidence and levels of capability and assuredness that it's going to work out. And so what I did was I really got clear on the version of me that had already achieved being a published New York Times bestselling author. And more than that, extended beyond that into understanding and my knowingness of the impact that this book was making on people, because that's such a more powerful vision to me and I can connect to it so easily. So I then said, okay, what is she doing? What does her day look like? And how can I start taking actions now that are the same actions I'll be taking then? And this is where it gets a little scary, because it will force you to push yourself out of your comfort zone, because you're going to be doing something new like you've never done before. So it was starting to talk about my book. It was, training on content in my book. I would say that was probably one of the biggest anchor moments for me, was that I had committed to last year training on the content of the book, but I made that commitment a year prior when the book was in an outlined form. It was not written yet. And so I knew that if I could make that kind of a commitment, it would force my hand. It would force me to start showing up as a writer, to start thinking big. And then I stood up on that stage and said, my book is getting published. Like, I threw the gauntlet in a very big way.
And I think that was the catalyst that created the change, because you set the goal or the intention that not only were you going to write the book, but you were going to find a publisher. And I want to share a story on that in a second. But you also wanted to then speak on the topic. What I want people to know is that's what we call the gestation period. That's where nothing is happening. I mean, yes, you're writing the book. You're seeing like the word count go up, but you're not seeing anybody all of a sudden treat you differently. You're not seeing offers and opportunities showing up. But you set the commitment, and then it felt like nothing was happening. You even finished the book and it felt like nothing was happening. Like, oh no, shit, here we go again. This is another book that's just going to sit on my desktop in a folder marked for the future. But when you got up on stage and you trained for hours on the content from your book, and you got hundreds of people to hold an intention of you finishing the book, producing the book, giving them a date, and then speaking into the results of what you were going to do, in my mind, that's when all of a sudden the momentum picked up. Now, what I want to share with our audience is this. To be a published author, not self-published, published author is a grueling process. There are so many things that go into being a published author, and people want to be, but now it's so easy to just self-publish, to just put something on Amazon.
Which is totally fine, by the way. And I think it just depends on what your personal goals are.
But what I'm getting at is it's made the publishing world more difficult, because they are significantly more strict in whether you are choosing to self-publish or whether you are being selected by a publishing house. And Anniston sent out query letter after query letter to agents, to publishing houses, to everyone that you can imagine. And that is a tiring, grueling process. And the way people communicated with her were like, you're not worth our time, or we're too busy, or your book's great, but not for us. One really big publishing company sent back a congratulatory email saying, hey, we just want you to know you were one of the top 5 or 8 out of 10 people that we selected out of thousands of books. We love your book, but you didn't make the top.
Oh, that was the Hay House Writers Contest. For those of you that don't know Hay House, I've read so many Hay House books. I'm a huge fan of that publishing company, but they do a writing contest yearly, and they basically give you an opportunity to win a publishing contract without necessarily having to have an agent. And so I had submitted, and again, that was a big step, a big, like, putting my stake in the sand, willing to put together a proposal, get it out there. And I got an honorable mention. I was in the top 10 out of thousands of submissions, which
in itself is an incredible achievement. Yes. But what I want to point out is that outside of Hay House's letter to you, all of the experiences that Anniston was experiencing was no. And it wasn't, there were not a lot of nice no's either. And there wasn't a lot of respect in that. But after Anniston did the training, after she became the end result of what she wants to achieve, she closed the gap on what does it look like. And I will tell you, when she reads the email communication or has the phone call communication with who is her publisher today, it's with respect. They wrote a letter back saying, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible. We love it. It would be an honor to publish your book. We just," and the terminology was so different. When Anniston read it to me, we were sitting outside and I just had this smile on my face and I said, "Babe, you know, they see you. They see you." And she said, "I feel like they see me." But here's the thing, all the other publishers, they didn't get a chance to see Aniston because when they were reading her manuscript, they were reading it with the energy of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy.
Will probably never get published. 100%. You know, I actually think you're really right about that. I feel like standing up on that stage and making that commitment after I got off the stage and got busy with life, like there would be those moments where I let doubt creep in and I think, oh my gosh, what if this really never happens for me? What if I don't fulfill my dream of getting this out into the world in the way that I want to? And I kept thinking about just self-publishing, which again, there is nothing wrong with self-publishing, but that wasn't my desire for this book. It felt wrong to me for this book. And I almost settled, almost. But then I was reminded of who do I want to be and how do I want it to feel and what do I want this whole experience to feel like? And if I can dream it, I know I can achieve it. I know that there's a possibility out there. I just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and I have to trust my gut. And so I turned down the opportunity or what I had been looking at in terms of doing a self-publishing through a company. And instead I kept going. And that's when I was met with success, found the publisher, and man, did it feel right. Every bit of it has felt right since then. It's smooth, it's easy. And so I feel like the lesson here for you is this. If you want something, and now we're kind of speaking into those real juicy desires, I think, those like desires that have been on your heart, and Rudi has a great story to share as well for his, it is going to require you to start being that now. And the quicker you can start being that now and start feeling into that energy before it shows up, the quicker it will show up.
You know, I had a call with a client this week, and I'm supporting a particular company where I'm working not only with the president of the organization, but with her top, 10 executives. And I share this story because one of the executives came to me 2 weeks ago and just had this open heart-to-heart conversation. I don't feel valued. I don't feel seen. I don't feel appreciated. I'm really wanting elevation. I'm wanting more responsibility. My dreams and my goals or desire is to be seen as somebody who could take over the company. This is all the things that I do, but I just don't feel like I'm being seen as that person. In meetings, I want to put my hand up, but I'm like, what's the point? And we were just having this dialogue. And so we had the conversation, and I would like to have this conversation with our entire audience. It's one of my favorite training topics. And I'm going to take an hour's worth of information and put it into a simple example for you. If your dream or goal or desire is to be a millionaire, and right now you make 40, 50, 60, 100, $150,000 a year, but you want to be a millionaire, we can agree that there is a very big gap between making $100,000 or $50,000 and $1 million. And the quality of your life exponentially changes when you start to make over $300,000. It's like the world opens up at a completely different level. And so when you're making $50,000 or $100,000, you can't really, feel what it would feel like to be somebody who's making $1 million a year and has the options of a person who's making $1 million a year. And so you're reminded every time you see your bank account, you're reminded that you see your options. You go to a restaurant, every time you sign something, you're aware that what you have is like this diminishing nut. And then every month you're waiting for the next amount of money to come into your bank account. And so when we talk about your thoughts produce your feelings, your thoughts and feelings drive your behavior, your thought is, I want to be a millionaire. And then you go and have a dinner and it's $300 and you were thinking it was $200. And you have that pang inside of you like, oh crap, like, oh my gosh, that was more than I imagined. And then you don't enjoy the dinner anymore. Now it's almost like it's ruined its taste. It's ruined the experience because you weren't expecting 300 you were expecting around about 200. And so what is the energy of that? Oh my gosh, oh, that was more than and now I have to cut back here or there. And so it creates a shift in what you're calling into yourself. And so here's the question. If you want to be a millionaire, what do you think comes first? Do you first have to have $1 million in your bank account, under your bed, in the trunk of your car that you can open, look at, touch, feel? Or do you first feel like a millionaire and then the money comes?
So do you think this is why so many people who win the lottery wind up going broke?
They actually have studies on this that within 2 to 3 years, I mean, I forget the number now, but it's in the 90% of people that have won the lottery, any amount of money, are actually the same as they were when they won it, and the majority are even worse off. And it's because the thought process that got them into winning the money wasn't aligned with keeping the money. So it was like, they matched it for a moment, they got the money, but their thought patterns were lack, or their thought patterns were limitations. And so how you feel is going to dictate and drive all of your external environment. And so, yes, 100%. If you're not thinking, feeling, and acting as somebody who is abundant, you're going to lose whatever it is that you're wanting to hold on to. And there's the thing, it's hold on to. But if you can feel abundant, and let's say you go for dinner and it's $300 and you're just like, whatever, like it's going to come in again and money's going to continue to flow. I love to use this analogy. When you woke up this morning, think about this. Did you think, how many breaths am I going to have today? And then start counting every one of your breaths. And then the more you breathe, the more you start to worry, is like, are you going to have enough before you go to bed? Well, we don't count our breaths. And so if you're not counting your breaths in every moment of every day, you trust the universe is going to just provide you more air. And that's been your experience. And your evidence has shown you when you need air, you have air. And so you just continue to take advantage of breathing. Well, air is energy, and so is money. And what if you could just look at money the same way you look at air and trust that more's going to come? And I don't mean be frivolous, but I mean look at it as an energetic match to how you're feeling.
I always feel like you have been so good at this ever since I've met you anyway. I remember when we first met, this was one of our first like dates together, if you want to call it that. We were walking somewhere and he bent down to pick up this penny. And I heard him say, money comes to me quickly and easily. Money comes to me quickly and easily. And he put it in his pocket. And then I saw him do it again. And at first I was like, ooh, like that's gross. It's money off the ground. But then I remember we were passing by, I don't know, like doing some window shopping or something. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Wouldn't that be great to buy? And you were like, it would be. I could if I wanted to, And I remember you used to carry, and I think you still do, like a crisp $100 bill in your wallet. And you said it was because you never wanted to be in a place where you were like, can I afford it or not? You always felt abundant. And so you were already leaning into being even more abundant than you were through these little practices that you were doing. And then I feel like you naturally brought this into creating your life's work, because for those of you that have had the benefit of seeing Rudi speak, he's a force of nature. Like he really is. I know I'm a little biased because I'm his wife, and I'm also a public speaker, and I've trained as a public speaker. I train public speakers now. He is by far the best I've ever seen. And it's because of this supernatural energy he brings to a stage. And that didn't start when he started getting stages. That started when we started having people come over to our living room for, we've talked about this in previous episodes, when we started hosting these free coaching clinics, apparently for strangers to come into our house and for him to coach. And he would bring it, man. He would bring that energy as if he was speaking to 80,000 people. And that hasn't shifted. So how can somebody start to curate that mindset?
So I want to use what you said to go back to my original story. So this guy calls me and says, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be valued. I want to be appreciated. I'm not being seen. I'm not being valued. I'm not being appreciated. And I said, what does all of that feel like? Does it feel like you have it? Are you acting like somebody who has it? Or are you stuck in a place where you feel anchored into a past where you feel helpless and feel like a victim? And the guy was silent for a moment. And then I said, what would a person do that's being seen, being valued, being appreciated, is the person that is being seen to be tapped in as the next president of the company, how would that person walk and talk and act? And the man was really quiet. He literally just sat there for a few moments, mouthful of teeth, and then he said, I think I get it. We spoke a little more, ended our hour-long conversation, and the following week, this week, I had a call with the president of the company. And out of all of the people within the organization, he was named in that call without me soliciting it. And the leader said, there's been such a shift in him this week. Like, I have seen this guy put his hand up in meetings. I've seen him bring incredible ideas forward. He is leading from the front. She even mentioned the guy's been wearing a suit and a jacket or a blazer or a suit every single day into the office, whereas he hadn't been doing that in the past. He'd been dressing nicely, but now he's buttoned down, crisp, and he is being the person he wants to be. And that's the thing. When you want to be the president of the company, are you dressing like the president of the company? Are you talking like the president of the company? Are you thinking like the president of the company? Are you bringing ideas forward? And I want to ground this for our audience. That happened inside of 2 weeks. 1 week was the conversation. 1 week was the acting and the being. And the second week was when, the leader came to me and said, wow, such a great shift. I'm so impressed. Wow, what's happening with this person? And that's what I want people to know. You can step into what you want far quicker than you can imagine. You just have to not have resistance to it. I, for the longest time, wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to be able to create an impact. And I'm going to tell you, ever since I was 20 years old and I was in the business world, I started coaching and developing high-performing teams. I started selling gym memberships in South Africa back in the day. And then I got tapped in as the youngest manager, and they just put me on a growth path. And I showed the ability to be able to move people inside of a room. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew I had a desire to coach and to speak. But I thought that it was a certain way of you only a speaker when you're on a big stage. And, one of my mentors has always been Tony Robbins. And, as of late, Joe Dispenza, and these incredible people that are moving the world. And so my idea of what would that look like was only when I saw someone on that big stage. And Anniston had a beautiful conversation with me once that was like the biggest kick in the pants that I think I've ever had from her. And I've had many.
I love to give you those kinds of conversations.
Oh my God. And I was saying to her one day, I feel so disheartened with where I'm at. I want to be a speaker. I want to be coaching. I want to be in my own business. I want to be doing these things. And she turned around and she said to me, Rudi, you're in corporate America. You run a massive sales team. You are doing, 9 figures in revenue. Why don't you start coaching your people right where you are? And I'm like, well, I already support them. She said, no, you're supporting a sales team. Why don't you start coaching the people around you? And I sat with that for the longest time. And I realized I was waiting for somebody to give me a stage. I was waiting for somebody to give me the authority. And in a way, I did have someone give it to me because Anniston gave it to me in the most loving way. She held up a mirror where I got to lie in bed all of that night thinking, man, how many people am I not showing up for at work every day when I have an audience every day that's coming to me, and it's my responsibility to show up? So I started being the coach. I started being the person I wanted to be. The numbers went up. The tenureship went up. Like, everything created these beautiful shifts and changes. And then I had the confidence to leave. I started my coaching business. And, I support a lot of people who are aspiring to be coaches today. And there is this long period that people go through to, find their feet. And they first start at $300 an hour. And then it's a big jump to get to 500. And then they want to get to 1,000. And you just see this process of how difficult it is. My career took off. And within 3 months of me starting my own business, I was out earning what I was making in my corporate job. By the end of the first year, I doubled what I was making in my corporate job. The second year, I was making 3 times, and it's significantly grown since then. And so the beauty is in, can you be who you aspire to be right now? What would that feel like?
I think so many coaches, well, and I won't just limit this to the coaching field, but it's something that we're really close to. So I see it all the time. It's this whole idea of like, how am I going to break through? Because the coaching world right now is just exploding. Everyone and their dog's becoming a coach, which is great. We need a lot of people turning around and saying, here, let me show you the way. And I think the natural thing to do when you've overcome a trauma, or you've really had a great spiritual and developmental growth spurt is to want to teach, because it's within each and every one of us. I think it's in our DNA. However, what really stands in the way is this inability to just start doing what you want to be doing and not wait for permission. And that could be your group of neighbors, that come over to your house for tea, and you say, and you just start having a meaningful motivational conversation with them. It could be how you show up with your family. You started showing up as a coach everywhere. And it wasn't you stopped trying to be or leaning into be, and you were just being. And now you can't turn it off. I mean, if we invited any number of you over to our house for a dinner, you would be like, are you guys for real? Because we sit and have these really deep, meaningful conversations, and he's constantly coaching me. He's constantly coaching the kids. I'm coaching them. And it's just this constant energetic exchange, but at no time does it turn off, which is why he knows, and I know, that it will continue to expand as long as this is aligned with his purpose. And so what we really want you to hear, and why we felt so passionate about sharing this with you today, is that when Rudi and I have a desire, if we are not achieving it or it's not moving forward, our first question isn't, is it possible for us? Our first question is, are we actually starting to be that which we want to be now? And generally, that's where the opportunity is. Generally, that's the big aha moment when we take a step back and we're like, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm still imagining what it would be like, but I'm not being that now. It still feels really far away. I haven't figured out a way to connect the two. And so what we want to encourage you right now is to really think about that desire. I want you to, and think about and imagine and visualize you embodying that, you experiencing that. Who are you? What do you feel like in your body? What do you wear? What do you talk about? What do you spend your time doing? Who are you speaking to? Who's in your community and your crowd? And then look for ways right now in your present moment that you can start to bring some of those elements into your day-to-day.
I want to share something with the audience, and I'm going to encourage you to at least explore this possibility. And that is to head over to my website and click on resources and download the course on how to prime for success. When you are priming, which is a technique that I teach, I literally bring this into companies where we take companies from a few $100 million into the billion range. We take startup companies from, $10,000 a month in revenue to $100,000, and we do it almost immediately. Like, it's just creating profound shifts. And that is because we teach people how to be what it is that you're already aspiring to be, because the value in this is that you change where your brain accesses information. When you think and feel like somebody who's stuck, you're going to act like somebody who feels stuck. Your brain processing is going to go to a part of your brain that's limited. When you can expand to the possibility of what's possible for you, you make bolder decisions. You literally access different parts of your brain that for most people are dormant unless you're a high achiever, high performer, somebody who takes risk, and that is going to light up like a thunder and lightning storm. And you are going to be bolder and take bolder risks and be more courageous. And then you're going to start to stack the evidence of it. And so priming is a process that I teach that supports you in how do you align with the feeling of the end result of already having achieved what it is that you most desire. And if you haven't achieved it yet, we support you to feel the end result in the very beginning of your day. And if you can connect to that, you're changing where your brain is going to think. You're changing where your brain is going to feel. You change the actions, the behaviors that you're going to take. The automatic default patterns of I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy and I can't and I shouldn't, all of a sudden go a little more dormant, and you start to activate the new ones. And the more you activate the new ones, the more dormant you make the old ones. And then you literally become what it is that you're aspiring to be. Everything that you've ever had, everything you've ever done, everything you've ever achieved is because of how you thought, of how you felt. And the reason you are where you are right now is because you still feel that way. You're still stuck that way. And all you have to do is align to the end result of what it is that you want. And so I want to share with you now that you are so insanely powerful, brilliant, capable, can be, can do, but you're the difference maker. You are the one thing that's going to create the shift in what it is that you want. It's never going to come externally. No one ever is going to give it to you. And you've got to create that shift inside of you. The thing that you want, you're worth having. but you've got to create the difference in the behavior in your mind. So your mind can emotionally, chemically update your body, so your body can update your energy, so your energy can become a force that is working for you, drawing more experiences to you. We love you so freaking much. Thank you for joining us on the Empowered Life podcast. We hope to see you on the next episode real soon. Please make sure to rate, review, and share this message with anyone that you feel needs to hear this message. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a message on anything that most resonated with you. From Rudi, Anniston, we love you guys.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.